I'd like to call this March 3rd meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission to order. And can I get a roll call of commission members, please?
Commissioner Boren.
Here.
Commissioner Boren's here via Zoom. Commissioner Helfrey, Commissioner Cohn,
Here.
Commissioner Clayton,
Here.
Commissioner Depler just came in on Zoom, and I'll get her promoted. Commissioner Jackson, Commissioner Rubis, Chair Beatty,
Here.
Councilmember Brost,
Here.
Mayor Garitano. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Tonight on the agenda, we have 2 public hearing items, 2 letters of recommendation, 1 information report, and 1 other item. And can I get an approval of the minutes from the February 3rd meeting, please? All right, motion by Commissioner Rubis, seconded by Commissioner Clayton. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Does the Department of Planning have any opening comments?
No, sir, but thank you for asking.
All right, thanks. And let's see here. So this time we'll go into the public comment session. If you want to speak on either of the public hearings, now is not the time. But if you want to speak on any other agenda item, please give Mr. Newberry a speaker card and he will call you to the podium when it is your turn. And as a reminder, 3 minutes for individuals, 5 minutes if you're representing a group. Mr. Newberry?
Mr. Chair, the department hasn't received any comment cards for the public comment session, as you described. But we do have a few on Zoom if we just want to give them an opportunity to raise their hand if they'd like to speak.
Okay. Sorry. Thank you.
Yes, no one's raised their hands.
Okay. All right. Covering up the important papers here. All right, so at this time, we'll go into our public hearings. In the city of Wildwood, public hearings are truly intended to accept comments and questions concerning these items. Since these requests are being presented at public hearing, no action is planned on these items tonight, and consideration of them is to be taken no earlier than the April 7th, 2025 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. This approach ensures the members of the commission will hear all opinions before taking any action. The city's Department of Planning will address the comments, questions, and concerns that are raised tonight and include them as part of its formal recommendation to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Anyone in attendance at City Hall tonight wanting to speak should fill out a speaker's card and leave it with Mr. Newberry. Those in attendance via the Zoom webinar platform should use the raise hand feature to indicate you wish to speak at these hearings. A team member will add you to the list of speakers, which will then be communicated to me as chair, and I will invite you to speak when it is your turn. The public hearing process is outlined in the public hearing guidelines pamphlet, which can be found on the table at the entry area to the council chambers. The commission will allow all parties adequate time to present their position. As outlined in the public hearing guidelines pamphlet, speakers who are designated as a group speaker representing more than 5 individuals will be allocated 5 minutes to speak. Those individuals representing themselves will be allocated 3 minutes to speak. In addition, information on these items can be found on the city's website at www.cityofwildwood.com. The commission would like to thank you for your cooperation and participation at tonight's hearing. So first on the agenda, PZ 2-25, Mr. Vunich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My microphone doesn't seem to work as well at the desk, so people
Yeah, I
can
noticed
hear on
that.
Zoom. The first public hearing item is PZ 2-25, G2 Property Holdings, care of Martin L. Ewell, 2691 Joyce Ridge Drive, Chesterfield, Missouri, 63017. A request for a change in zoning from the amended C8 Plan Commercial District to the second amended C8 Plan Commercial District for a property that is generally located at the terminus of Hawthorne Village Parkway, west of State Route 109, and also being south of State Route 100. PZ 22-97, St. Ange Properties / Wildwood Auto Mart. Property address 17109 Hawthorne Village Parkway, St. Louis County, locator number 23V 130042. Amended C8 Plan Commercial District, Town Center Workplace District, thereby allowing amendments to the current governing ordinance to conclude new permitted uses and authorize other related accessory activities at the subject location. Proposed use, warehouse facility with parking area, and also being inclusive of outdoor storage of equipment and related materials. This particular site is located in Ward 1.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Mr. Newberry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The department has prepared a brief slide presentation of some exhibits and photographs regarding the site. The aerial photographs that you'll see in the first few slides were also provided as part of the public hearing packet. First is an arrow of the site identified in blue, the southwest corner of State Route 109 and State Route 100 at the terminus of Hawthorne Village Parkway. Of course. The next is a little bit more zoomed in that also identifies the area of the site. And then the next image is a closer view of the site with all of the other layers turned off, so you can see the existing drive that's on the site and other improvements. The next is a series of photographs. This is standing at the entrance into the gas station, Phillips 66, looking towards the west, towards the site. This next image is looking to the east towards State Route 109, the roundabout there. This is looking at the entrance into the site from Hawthorne Village Parkway. This is standing a little farther into the entrance along the drive, looking directly to the west. This is standing at a similar location, a little farther to the west, looking towards the east. The building you see there is the gas station, or the C-store, excuse me, yeah. And this is looking at about the terminus of the drive that you saw in the aerial images, looking to the south and to the east. You can see the entrance there around the center of the photograph. And this image is to show from the trail along State Route 100, looking towards the south. It depicts as if you can look through the trees, it depicts the elevation change there. And then this is the site plan for the proposed development. And that concludes the department's presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Do we have any speaker cards?
We have one speaker card from Mr. Hudson.
Thank you. My name's Tom Hudson. I live at 17153 Lafayette Trails Court. My wife and I are 30-year residents of Wildwood. I'm also here on behalf of all of our neighbors whose homes back up to 109. And there are 3 points of concern we have with regards to this development. As you're all well aware of, traffic on 109 is out of control. The noise is unbearable most times of the day. And we can hear the hot rodders go west on 100 for miles. So we don't need more trucks and more traffic on 109 driving through the center of our neighborhood. The second thing is, I noticed on the public information card here that there's a lot of information that's omitted. It says, inclusive of outdoor storage of equipment and related materials. What does that mean? They're going to be golf carts or bulldozers? It'd really be nice if we had some specific information. If it's going to be bulldozers, that's out of the question because it's just going to be noisy. I can guarantee you if they're dropping big pallets of pipes or whatever, lumber, I-beams on that plot, we'll be able to hear it in our backyard. We live at the bottom of a bowl and it magnifies all of the sound around us. And the third thing is I have some concerns about Mr. Yule being a resident of Chesterfield and not being a resident of Wildwood. Why doesn't he build his warehouse in Chesterfield? Why does he have to come here? And those are our concerns. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Mr. Chair, the department has not received any additional comment cards. However, again, there are a few on Zoom. The petitioner is in attendance, Mr. Ribis. Yes.
Petitioner like to speak?
Well, thank you to the commission for having us here tonight. My name is Martin Yule, and I am actually my family is from Wildwood and has been here since pre-incorporation, so we're quite familiar with the neighborhood. I also own a landscaping business, a small business, and it is not a business that operates or stores large machinery or anything like that. We're just looking for a warehouse where we can put some equipment inside. We would get it in the morning and be gone for the day and then return it at the end of the day. Regarding any of the outdoor storage, I think the only thing that we have discussed to this point is, some vehicles that might have license plates, trucks or trailers. We don't have bulldozers or anything like that, any heavy equipment. We're not even at this point discussing any material storage or anything. We have a lot of customers in the area, and Wildwood is a great community, and we would like to be a part of it. And that's why we're petitioning to construct this building.
All right. Thank you.
Got a question.
Commissioner Rubis?
Is this warehouse and storage is strictly for your company?
Yes.
So
Yes,
it's
sir.
not public storage or
Nope.
anything like that?
Nope, it would be just for.
And,
our
and this
company.
is for your company as a landscaping company?
Correct.
And do you have any, what they call skid steers or anything like
We
that?
do not.
So you're talking about basically lawnmowers?
Lawnmowers
Stuff like that.
and things, yeah. And
Okay.
all of that would be.
Most of that's
indoors.
inside storage?
Yes,
So the only outside would be coming and going?
correct.
Okay.
And part of the reason also that we have selected this property was, while it is a great location for us, it's also kind of hidden away. It's sort of down at a lower elevation, and we don't want to even be seen. So we want to, be good neighbors and, make sure that we keep everyone happy
Okay.
and take really good care of it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mayor Garitano?
What would be the hours of business or activity that would take place there?
In general, probably about 7 a.m, we'd load up some equipment and leave the property. And we would return anywhere from 7 or 8 p.m. even in the summer. I mean, so yeah. And that would
And
be
so
it.
you don't have customers that come to this
There'd be no
location?
customers coming there. There would be no employees hanging around there. We would just pick up and drop off.
Got it. And just elaborate a little bit more, the equipment. I guess when I think of landscaping businesses, I just want to confirm my understanding. Are we talking about like pickup truck or?
Yeah,
kind of
so we have small equipment like lawnmowers and other various tools and trimmers and chainsaws and snowplows, and all of that stuff would be kept indoors.
Mhm.
And then we have approximately 5 or 6 trucks that are nice late model trucks and some nice late model trailers, and those would be the only things that would be parked outside overnight.
All right, thank you.
All right. Commissioner Helfrey?
I guess this question, I don't know if it would be for you, sir, or for Mr. Bunich. Has there been any discussion of if this were to go through a fence around the property to keep all of his equipment kind of hidden? a fence around it at all to keep the items hidden?
Well, certainly that could be an option if there is a favorable recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission. I think the intent of the petitioner is to have most of the storage inside the warehouse building. But I would note that this is in town center, and so the building itself must meet Architectural Review Board requirements and guidelines. And I think that's a key element as well.
So in the drawings that I'm seeing here, and I apologize for, I feel like I missed a little bit at the beginning. In these drawings, it looks as if it almost looks like a pole barn building, right? One of those.
Well, what you're looking at is kind of like a structural rendering, but we've already discussed the architectural standards, and we would, comply with those in terms of making it look nice and align with the standards that are required.
Okay, thank you. Tip, and you said, Mr. Vunich, you said if it was received your favorable, tonight's just a public hearing though, right?
Correct.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, sir.
Councilman Brost?
Yeah, I was just wondering, what are the hours of the gas station that's right adjacent to that property?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I'll certainly find out. I'll send it out in an email to all of you as soon as I can.
The Phillips
Yeah.
66. I feel like
Yeah,
was
it
prob-
would, I guess I would just say that it's the gap, I mean, the hours of the landscape business probably falls within the hours of the gas station. So
would
I
agree with
just,
that.
so, but it'd probably be a good thing to follow up on. I don't think we've restricted the hours of the gas station, but it'd be nice to know what they are. Thank you.
Just from living near there, I would say 5 a.m.-ish to 11-ish probably. I don't think they're open until midnight, but they're open fairly late. The BP, I believe, it at least used to be 24 hours, I think. Any other questions or discussion? All right, seeing none, can I get a motion to close the public hearing? Commissioner Helfrey? All right, seconded by Commissioner Jackson. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thanking him, he's still.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate your insight. Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, public hearing is closed. Thank you. All right, next on the agenda, PZ 3-25, Mr. Newberry.
PZ 3-25, City of Wildwood Planning and Zoning Commission, care of Department of Planning, 16860 Main Street, Wildwood, Missouri, 63040. An authorized review by the Planning and Zoning Commission of certain components of the city's sign regulations, specifically Chapter 415.030 definitions, Chapter 415.400 sign regulations general, Chapter 415.410 sign regulations for FP, NU, PS, and all R districts, and Chapter 415.420 sign regulations for all C and M districts, which will consider possible modifications relating to electronic message boards, sign escrow deposits, calculation of sign sizes, lighting characteristics, installation components, and the related definitions for the same, all wards.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Vunich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, due to some quick work on the part of Officer DeGelder, I am able to tell you that the Phillips 66, at least on the internet, advertises itself as a 24-hour business. So
I think that's wrong. I just drive by there late at night and see it dark, but
we will do our best to kind of give you some information as best we can on their hours of operation through the week.
it probably used to be, but I just feel like it's not right now.
Thank you again.
Mhm.
Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the department has posted for public hearing a number of items relating to the city sign regulations. As the commission members may recall, at the January 2025 meeting, the Department of Planning requested authorization to post the matter for electronic message boards. Since that time, the Economic Development Committee of City Council held a Wildwood Business Forum, one of two they hold annually each year. And at that business forum, there were a number of business owners from the city of Wildwood, and the issue of sign regulations was discussed. The discussion led the department to identify additional items it would like to consider as part of the overall consideration of sign regulations that are part of the city's zoning ordinance. In the information that's been prepared for you tonight, the department does identify the posting that had been prepared for this particular item, and it does identify the definition section, the general chapter of the sign regulations, those sign regulations for all FP, NU, PS, and R districts, and then finally all the sign regulations for the commercial and industrial districts. It speaks to different components of those as well. Key amongst all of this is the electronic message boards. And I do want to advise you that later on in the agenda, the department will be asking for authorization to post for a work session that discussion, that in-depth discussion on electronic message boards that the Planning and Zoning Commission members requested at the aforementioned January 2025 meeting. At that work session, there will be a number of items presented on this particular matter, and those items will provide much greater detail than what is identified in the primer that has been provided to you tonight. Those items will include an expert on electronic message boards, an entity, whether a business firm, consultant, or a sign company representative that can speak to them with greater authority than obviously the Department of Planning. Also, the city attorney has agreed to do research in terms of electronic message boards and how they are treated in other cities across the St. Louis region. I think you'll find that to be very interesting, and that I'm sure, as we know, each municipality seems to treat them differently, some prohibiting them like the city of Wildwood, and others having what I would consider loose regulations associated with them as well. With regards to the other signage, the last page of the primer identifies 5 items, and they relate to a sign escrow that the Department of Planning collects for any installation of any commercial signage, generally within town center. Sign escrow is $500, and it is held by the city until such time the business relocates or leaves the space. The intent of the sign escrow is to ensure that a business sign with no longer the business there, it doesn't remain on the facade for an extended period of time. It was recommended by a consultant that the city engage back in the middle part of the 2000s, 2006 specifically, and it seemed like an excellent suggestion. However, what we found is gaining access onto private property to remove a sign on a private building is not as easy as one might think. And for the most part, the department is wanting to eliminate that requirement. Also, what we are finding over the course of time relative to wall signs, flat signs, as we now call them in the sign regulations, is that our calculation of size, which is premised on a single dimension, the width of the tenant space, is not necessarily as appropriate as we had hoped when it is applied to taller buildings or taller facades, those that exceed 1 story. Proportionately, it doesn't address the taller facades or those with a larger amount of square footage. And we'd like to investigate that. Also, as you know, in 2020, we updated the sign regulations to address the United States Supreme Court rulings relative to neutral content signage. And at that time, we made a recommendation to send sign sign variance requests to the Architectural Review Board for recommendations. I'd like to address that process and add a little more to it to ensure that the Architectural Review Board has the best information, therefore providing the best recommendation to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Also, we still struggle with our temporary banners, and I like to think that there is an approach that's better than what we have. We've modified those regulations probably 4 or 5 times, and to date, we still struggle a bit trying to get compliance as well as application. Certainly, we're going to investigate what others do to hopefully improve the process and gain better compliance. And then finally, most recently, we've had several businesses not located in the city of Wildwood place signs in the right-of-way, and we want to reinforce how we treat those signs and ultimately the penalties associated with them if possible. And so that is a short list. Tonight, the department is hoping that if there is anyone on the Planning and Zoning Commission or in attendance in the public that have some other thoughts or suggestions, we hear them and can incorporate them into our research. As I noted, I have not spent a great deal of time on electronic message boards, but we will have a work session in April with the authorization of the commission tonight. And that is where we'll kind of delve deeper into electronic message boards and if they are suitable or not for the city of Wildwood. I would say one key thing, the work sessions are public meetings. So if there is interest of anyone other than the Planning and Zoning Commission on those matters, attendance is always welcome. Tonight, I'll conclude with that. We have an opportunity to give direction before the work session on the message boards and any of the other sign regulations that have been identified in the primer or exist in our code. So thank you for your attention, and Mr. Newberry, Mr. Lee, Mr. Young, our city attorney, and I are available for any comments or questions. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Commissioner Jackson.
I just have one for Attorney Young while he's researching. Would it be possible that the answer that I'm looking for is it's possible for law enforcement, fire, public safety things where can we allow electronic signs for a firehouse, if you will? And then if we do that, can we disallow it for anything else? Or if you allow it for one, it's good for all. I don't know the rule. That's what I'm looking for an answer to while he's researching. Thank you.
Well, with the chair's permission, I think Mr. Young went off mute for a second, so I'm going to ask him if he wants to respond. Thank you, Mr. Young.
Yeah, thank you. And the short answer is we believe we can, and that will definitely be something as part of our final recommendation on options.
Thank you.
Commissioner Rubis.
In this particular instance, the commission was the petitioner per the discussion we held on January 21st of this year. But also, sorry.
I was going to advise the chair that the department has not received any comment cards from anybody in attendance.
All right, thank you.
And with the permission of the chair, Mr. Lee, via the Wildwood Business Forum I mentioned at the end of January, they are doing a sign regulation survey with the business community, and Mr. Lee would like to kind of describe that. I'd sure appreciate it.
With your permission, Chair.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Lee.
Certainly. In this case, back in January, we did have our we have it twice a year, our biannual business forum, and something that we repeatedly get as feedback from the business community is visibility is the main broad concern. But one thing we wanted to kind of tap into was the specifics of what are our businesses wanting to see change, because we get pretty broad interpretations, as in they want more visibility or they just want bigger signs. That said, the idea behind the survey that's been published right now, we have about 12 respondents. We're looking to get about 50 out of the 173 businesses we have that have commercial frontage. In this case, we're hoping to have them review the sign code itself, the regulations that are on the books, and our guide to sign regulations that kind of makes it a little bit more digestible, and then have them provide specific actionable feedback for us to then review and bring back to the committee, but then also submit to the Planning and Zoning Commission for review. We hope to have that feedback all tightened up and submitted by the end of this month, so that would be ready for the next meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Commissioner Helfrey?
Mr. Vunich, the only thing that I would request is that when we have our work session about this, for every type of sign that you tell us about, would you please have a picture of it so that we understand what exactly you're speaking about?
Certainly, and if
Please,
it's
thank you.
okay with the chair and the rest of the commission, before we start the work session, maybe just for 5 minutes, we can do a little PowerPoint presentation of the different types of sign our code allows, so that as we go into the discussion, you have that kind of as your foundation to review what we talk about.
Yeah, that'd be fine. I just, when we start talking about the different signs, and I'm a visual person, so it
Certainly.
will help me. Thank you.
Well, as part of the Wildwood Business Forum that we've mentioned on several occasions as part of the hearing tonight, the department did a quick inventory of our regulations in commercial districts as well as our industrial district in the Chesterfield Valley. You can have a monument sign, you can have wall signs, and in some instances, up to 3 wall signs. You can have window signs, you can have projection signs, you can have sandwich board signs, you can have kiosk signs. And I'm sure I'm missing 1 or 2, but there isn't necessarily a limitation or severe restriction on the types of signs. As Mr. Lee mentioned, oftentimes I think the issue is more just the size of the signs. And I think one of the items that's identified on the list as part of the primer is how we calculate sign size relative to the facade. And I think there is a better way to do it.
Well, I know that when we talked a couple years ago about the signage over there by West Glen Farms, that shopping area there, at times I was very confused about what we were looking at, right? So I had to drive over there, and it would have been nice to have had that information as we were talking about it. So anything that you have picture-wise will help the situation along. Thank you.
Certainly, and I apologize for the shortfall when we did that. Obviously, our intent is to have the information to you when you need it, so my apology.
I'm sorry. Commissioner Cohn?
Yes, can you hear me okay since I'm on Zoom?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, you mentioned calculating the size of the sign based on the frontage. I think something has to be considered when a retail location is located, I'm going to call it, for lack of a better term, the elbow. For example, I think it's called the Mattress, something that has come before the committee, and they're the elbow or the crouch of that shopping center, and their frontage is minimal compared to the square footage. And I believe we need to address situations like that when they occur.
Mr. Cohn, that's an excellent example, and we'll probably present some of that information from Mattress Dogs to you at the work session. If again, the work session is scheduled by the commission. And what ultimately happened there is the design of that building, that particular business has a 2-story facade. However, the way, again, our regulations measure sign size, they could only use the linear distance of the tenant space, which meant they ended up with a 16 square foot sign on a 2-story facade. So it looked out of proportion and not appropriate. Ultimately, they went to the Architectural Review Board, received a recommendation in terms of size and color, and then that was forwarded to the Board of Adjustment, which addressed it and ultimately approved a 50 square foot sign. Interestingly, the formula the department would like to use to calculate signage size would have allowed up to 54 square feet. So again, I think there's a better way to calculate sign size when their facade is either greater than 1 story in height or is significantly longer in width. So thank you, Mr. Coe.
While we're on the subject of that location, I pulled it up in Google Street View. So are we allowing them just on the side that faces the parking lot, or on the side that faces Manchester and Taylor? Or one?
Let me just describe the tenant space. It's like a cul-de-sac lot. So the front of it is very narrow, and then it widens out as it fronts onto Route 100 and Taylor Road. The Route 100 Taylor Road frontage is authorized for a sign. So the way our sign regulations read, if you have 2 frontages, you get 2 signs. What they ended up doing is they identified 3 separate signs that totaled less than 50 square feet, which is the allowable amount of that particular frontage. And so, yes, they'll have signage facing out toward that major intersection, as well as signage facing in toward Plaza Drive.
Okay. I was a little confused about the 2-story, but I forget that that is really tall on the inside there.
Yeah.
So,
And just as if you ever get the trivia question, inside that tower is a mobile telecommunications facility.
if no one has anything else, yeah. Motion by Commissioner Rubis to close the public hearing, seconded by Commissioner Helfrey. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, public hearing is now closed. Thank you. Next on the agenda, PZ 5-22, Mr. Newberry.
A request of the City of Wildwood Planning and Zoning Commission regarding PZ 5-22 New Community Church, amended C8 Planned Commercial District, Town Center Workplace District with a conditional use permit, CUP, in association with the same, south side of Manchester Road, west of Taylor Road. Street addresses 16830, 16832, 16832A, and 16840 Manchester Road. St. Louis County locator numbers 24V630352, 24V630011, 24V 610-068 and 24V520202, which would revert the current zoning designation of the property to the NU non-urban residence district. Accompanying this matter is a request to terminate the existing conditional use permit, CUP, associated with the site. These subject requests are due to the required site development plan, SDP, not being submitted for its review and action by the Planning and Zoning Commission within the allowable 24-month period of time, Ward 8.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Vinich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the Department of Planning has prepared for you tonight and your consideration the letter of recommendation in draft form for this particular request. As the Planning and Zoning Commission may recall, the New Community Church in 2022 purchased a 4+ acre property on the south side of Manchester Road in close proximity to their church facility. The intent was to add additional parking to meet congregation growth, as well as to provide space for recreational activities in association with their membership. Ultimately, the City Council concurred and authorized the rezoning of the property to an amended CA Plan Commercial District, and the Planning and Zoning Commission granted a conditional use permit for certain components of the proposed use. Each of those zoning instruments had certain timelines associated with the submittal of the site development plan to the Planning and Zoning Commission for review, consideration, and action. In the instance of New Community Church, an extension was granted, and then ultimately a timeline came again. The timeline for requiring the site development plan to be submitted. In that intervening period between the Planning and Zoning Commission granting an extension and the extension timeline being met, the Kenyu Community Church sold the property and is moving to Chesterfield sometime in late spring, early summer. So from the perspective of the department, there'll be no submittal of a site development plan, which means there'll be in non-compliance with the performance standards of the amended CA Plan Commercial District and the conditional use permit granted by this commission. Therefore, the department presented a recommendation to revert the zoning and terminate the conditional use permit. The Planning and Zoning Commission unanimously supported it. And now the letter of recommendation in draft form reflects your action and is ready for final vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Commissioner Helfrey?
I make a motion to approve.
All right, motion by Commissioner Helfrey, second by Commissioner Jackson. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, roll call vote.
Commissioner Boren,
Approve.
Commissioner Helfrey,
Yes.
Commissioner Cohn,
Yes.
Commissioner Clayton,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Depler,
Yes.
Commissioner Rubis, Chair Beatty,
Yes.
Councilmember Brost,
Yes.
and Mayor Garitano.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we got PZ 28-21, Mr. Newberry.
A request from the owner under contract / petitioner, parenthetical PZ 28-21 Cypress Real Estate LLC, care of Daniel Stegman, 16100 Swingley Ridge Road, Suite 210, Chesterfield, Missouri 63017, that seeks the reapproval of the previously adopted site-specific governing ordinance establishing a planned residential development overlay district for the single-family residential subdivision on a parcel of ground that is located on the west side of Center Avenue, south of its intersection with Manchester Road. Street address 2623 Center Avenue, St. Louis County, locator number 24V420032. This reapproval request is necessitated given certain timeframes associated with the required site development plan, SDP, were not met and now have lapsed. The previously approved and now proposed use of this subject site is a total of 11 new single-family dwellings, along with the the retention of the existing residents, thereby totaling 12 units, with all being on individual lots of record, including street improvements, common ground, and required public space areas, Ward 8.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Vunich.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, at the February 3rd, 2025 meeting of this commission, the Department of Planning presented its information report with recommendation regarding this particular set of requests. At the conclusion of the presentation of the Department of Planning, Planning and Zoning Commission voted 8-0 to retain the existing zoning, the R3 10,000 square foot resident district, as well as to reauthorize and recommend the reauthorization of the planned residential development overlay district for this site. As Mr. Newberry mentioned in reading the advertisement for these particular requests, the intent is to construct 11 new single-family detached dwellings on individual lots and to retain the existing home that's on the 5-acre tract of land. As part of the action of the Planning and Zoning Commission at that aforementioned February 3rd meeting, there was a request that 2 items be added to this particular recommendation report before forwarding to City Council. Those 2 items related to a landscape buffer along the southern boundary lines of the proposed lots to provide a screen between the trail, the City of Wildwood's trail, and the rear yard areas of Stone Mill, and that buffer provide adequate plantings to be effective. In the proposed conditions, attachment B, the department has identified that buffer and the proposed planting plan, a buffer yard D, which is the greatest extent possible within the 20-foot width associated with it. Also, the Planning and Zoning Commission endorsed the removal of the T turnaround and the installation of an emergency gate. The Planning and Zoning Commission wanted to ensure two things relative to the gate. That would be an attractive addition both to this development as well as those surrounding developments. And more importantly, it would be the responsibility of the homeowners association to maintain, not the city of Wildwood. Also, as part of that particular condition, the department identified that Metro West Fire Protection District must also review and recommend approval of the design to ensure compatibility with their requirement. So tonight, the two items identified by the Planning and Zoning Commission have been included in the proposed letter of recommendation, and it is in final form for action tonight by the Planning and Zoning Commission. If there are any questions or comments, again, the department will be glad to try to address them at this time, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Is there any discussion or motion? Commissioner Helfrey?
Typically, I think the city attorney prefers a motion on the floor, but I will defer to him.
Well, then I'll make a motion to approve and then I want to discuss.
All right, motion by Commissioner Helfrey, second by Commissioner Rubis.
Okay, so first of all, I want to say thank you for getting the elevations of the houses. I don't think that we had that the last time, and so thank you for that. And I just want to reiterate a couple of things. You said that I think almost all of the houses except for two are going to have side entry garages. Is that correct?
Actually, with the removal of the T turnaround, there may be an opportunity to have all 11 of the new single-family detached dwellings with side entry garages. And
Perfect.
that's the preference in town center due to our requirements relating to the visibility of the doors themselves.
Right. And then they're going to have to meet the design standards, the building standards of downtown because they are in downtown, correct?
Yes. All of those things relating to the type of materials, vinyl siding, hardy board, wood, stone, brick, etc., architectural style shingles, carriage doors for the garages, even though if they may be side entry. All of the penetrations on the roof, whether it's a stack or vent, have to match the color of the shingles. All of the requirements we put in place for Mr. Whalen's development on Center Avenue, whether it be Westley Park, Old Town Park, and the very same things that are in the Snowmill subdivision as well.
So then I just want to, one thing I want to touch on, because when I was reading the people's comments, they were worried that we weren't holding this neighborhood to the same standard. We actually are, but I thought you said that in the last meeting, did I recall correctly that those other neighborhoods are not actually in downtown and this is downtown designation? Is that correct?
Yes, Stone Mill.
That's why they're able to be a little bit closer, right?
Yeah, Stone Mill and the estates at Bordeaux were developed in the suburban residential area under our master plan, which do not have the same design standards or architectural guidelines that our town center plan does. So in many ways, these units will have greater requirements in terms of standards and guidelines than the Stone Mill and estates at Bordeaux subdivisions. And yes, by the fact that they're in town center, a higher density can be considered.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vunich.
Bordeaux, that's the ones on East Street, right?
Correct.
That's not town center?
No, there are the three northernmost lots, those lots kind of across from the Farmer Cafe.
Yeah.
Those are in town center, but the majority of the estates at Bordeaux, it's in the suburban area.
Those lots seem small for suburban.
That is when we did, that predated the change we did to the suburban residential area. At that time, you could have up to 2 lots per acre. Now it's just 1 lot per acre.
I mean, they still seem smaller than half acre, just
Well,
when I walk through there.
There's common ground to the rear. They use the overlay district, and so they're clustered. There's a pretty substantial area of common ground. And then they also dedicated about 1 acre of the ground to public space to the city of Wildwood.
Okay. So it's not every individual lot is necessarily a half acre.
Oh, no, not with
Okay.
the overlay district.
Okay.
But
That
terms
makes
of
sense.
density, there's no more than 2 units per acre.
For the
Yeah.
overall subdivision, yeah,
Yes.
okay.
And I believe in Stone Mill, we ended up doing something more like a 1 unit per acre, or just over that.
Yeah, Stone Mill, those definitely seem more spread out, but
Yep.
Bordeaux, yeah, it looks to me almost like town center.
But yes, suburban.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? All right, seeing none, roll call vote.
Commissioner Cohn,
Yes.
Commissioner Clayton,
Yes.
Commissioner Depler,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Rubis,
Yes.
Commissioner Boren,
Yes.
Commissioner Helfrey,
Yes.
Chair Beatty,
Yes,
Councilmember Brost,
Yes,
and Mayor Garitano.
Yes.
Thank you.
motion carries. Thank you. All right, next on the agenda, let's see here, PZ 1-25, Mr. Newberry.
D1-25 Cattails Lodge, care of Jane Budnick, 404 Strecker Road, Wildwood, Missouri, 63011. A request for an amendment to the site-specific governing ordinance for an existing commercial center located at the northeast corner of Strecker Road and Clayton Road, amended C8 Planned Commercial District, street address 16497 Clayton Road, St. Louis County locator number 21U120327, which seeks a modification to the permitted uses per the current legislation that are authorized at this location. Proposed use, luxury pet boarding facility, kennel, which will be limited to the keeping of cats. Ward 2.
All right, thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Vinich.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the department would like to just give a bit of a background relative to this particular site and the other properties that are located in the vicinity of the Clayton Strecker Roads intersection. Prior to the incorporation of the city, St. Louis County had designated all of the corners at Clayton and Strecker Roads to be commercial in nature. Where Elegant Child is located, the intent there was to have a convenience store with gas pumps and a car wash. And on this particular corner, they were looking at a very intense commercial development, much like this center, but with uses that could range from anywhere from fast food restaurants without drive-throughs to others. Ultimately, when the city incorporated this particular intersection, which is in the core area of residential properties, and chose to rezone all of the commercially designated properties at that intersection and several others in the vicinity to an amended CA Plan Commercial District. But key amongst that decision was that all uses would be C1 neighborhood business district types. I emphasize that because that particular commercial district has the least intrusive, least intensive commercial uses of any of the districts the city has within its zoning ordinance. In fact, they are intended to be those that serve the local population only, a very small radius. They provide services that residents in the general vicinity need, and certainly amongst them, they are intended, the buildings and the activities are intended to mirror more residential character than commercial. So just a bit of background, how we got commercial zoning outside town center at Clayton and Strecker Roads. As the commission is aware, at its meeting on February 3rd of this year, the petitioner, Ms. Budnick, proposed utilizing a single tenant space within this particular commercial center for cat boarding. The intent is to take the space, revitalize the space, and ultimately have up to, I believe it was, as referenced in the attachment, I'm drawing a blank, my apologies, no more than 42 cats associated with it. At the public hearing, there were a number of questions raised by the Planning and Zoning Commission members relative to the operating parameters associated with such a facility. Key amongst them were, is there any outdoor activity associated with this facility? Ms. Budnick noted, no, cats will be inside the tenant space and that there will be steps taken to ensure that cats are boarded appropriately and that it doesn't impact other tenant spaces in the center because it is a multiple tenant space. As the discussion concluded, there were a number of items that were identified by Ms. Budnick, the petitioner, that the Planning and Zoning Commission supported. So tonight, the department has prepared an information report with recommendation that is favorable to the request. But as part of that, besides adding that particular type of use, it has also identified a number of requirements associated with it. Those requirements reflect the Planning and Zoning Commission's direction and comments made by Ms. Budnick during the public hearing. They establish what the department believes are minimum hours of operation, particularly for staffing and activity levels at the facility, a limitation on the number of cats that can be boarded at the facility. And again, that is up to 42 in total. Specifications for the amount of space each cat will have that's being boarded. Licensing that is consistent with federal, state, county requirements, specifically in terms of boarding of animals and their treatment while boarded. Grooming activities are limited only to those cats that are boarded at the facility. So it is not intended for the general public to benefit from the grooming activities. That the petitioner must, as part of the lease space, install interior air purification that would be submitted to the Planning and Zoning Commission for review and action. Also, the petitioner would be required to provide odor control system, again, to be reviewed and acted upon by the Planning and Zoning Commission. And then finally, to introduce into the tenant space reasonable sound abatement steps that would be consistent with confines of the lease of the building. The department believes these conditions as referenced by the Planning and Zoning Commission or the petitioner herself will limit the impact and ensure that all activity is retained inside the building, not outside the building, and that a use that appears to be something of great interest of late be available to Wildwood resident. Again, it is a limited business. A business intended for the most part, the department believes, to serve the immediate vicinity and ultimately will provide a tenant or a space that obviously is vacant at the time. So from an economic development standpoint, it seems appropriate as well. The department has identified the conditions as part of its recommendation. Tonight is the first step in that process. Again, if the Planning and Zoning Commission recommends approval of the department's recommendation, we'll be back to the Planning and Zoning Commission at its April 2025 meeting for final action, and then proceed to City Council for public hearing as well. With that, Mr. Chair and members of the commission, the department will conclude its presentation. And if there are any questions or comments, I'd be glad to try to answer them at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Mayor Garitano?
Thank you. From what I see in the comments, it seems like there's a concern that there could be dogs, but I would imagine the concern is that the folks that have submitted those comments believe that those dogs would be outside creating noise, but we've already gotten an answer from this petitioner that they only intend to do cats.
Correct.
But I also familiar with the building as a former tenant there. There is really no space outdoors because they have behind the building is all air conditioning units and then a garbage dumpster right there. And there's really no land owned by that property owner beyond that. So I don't think there's any space anyway for anyone to go outside from what I could see. There's just none there. But the I know the noise, I mean, the cats, obviously, I don't think create a tremendous amount of noise. In fact, there's a gym, and as I said, I was a former tenant. We'd hear loud music through the walls from the workout facility. So I think that still creates more noise than, the cats in there.
I would agree.
So I don't think there's concerns there. And I know each of those units have their own heating ventilation system in there, so it's contained within that place there. You did mention several conditions. Are any feedback from the petitioner on the, regarding sound abatement or air purification that we should be aware of?
Mr. Newberry, as he typically does when he sends out the packet of information to the Planning and Zoning Commission, forwards it to the petitioners. I have not talked to Ms. Budnick since the report was issued late Friday. I don't know if Mr. Newberry has.
I have not spoken with the petitioner since the public hearing.
And actually, there was sound abatement there because the fitness place was in that spot. And they added something to the walls there because the hair salon next door, I think, had some complaints about music coming from the gym.
Okay.
So they may have addressed that, but because I know they did work on their walls for that. So anyway, yeah, I was just curious if we had any feedback on that.
I do not have any feedback from Ms. Budnick, the petitioner. Certainly, we will contact her based upon tonight's discussion and any action of the Planning and Zoning Commission. But again, the department obviously can create a set of conditions that it believes will limit impacts. The cooperation of the business owner or operator is key to making those conditions work. And obviously, if there is an issue where we see something outside the building, regardless of what space it is, it would be in violation of the conditions if ultimately adopted by the city council. So again, it's an enforcement action. Ms. Budnick seemed pretty confident that she would adhere to the conditions that were considered by the city. If they were reasonable, and the department believes these are reasonable conditions to accommodate that use.
All right, Commissioner Helfrey.
So my question is, I guess my concern is opening the door for problems down the road. So if we are talking about, and please correct me if I'm wrong, which I'm usually not, but kidding. I'm wrong a lot. Okay, so we're adding the word kennel, correct, to this? Is that what we're doing? We're changing the zoning to allow kennel, right?
Well, that obviously has been kind of the lightning rod relative to this request.
But that's what we're doing, right?
Well, if I could just give a bit of background.
Yes, sir.
When Ms. Budnick met with the Department of Planning and explained what she was planning on doing, Mr. Newberry, as Ripito and I are responsible to try to find a use that a word or a use in the code that identifies it as best as possible. That's a kennel. But in the report, we call it a cat kenneling facility. So we've added wording to it to ensure that it's just not a general kennel. It's a cat kenneling facility. And then we added all the conditions to ensure that it's a certain amount of cats and cats only. And there are provisions relative to operating parameters and the use of the tenant space.
Okay, so let's say for the sake of this conversation that next year she closes her cat kennel, okay? And now is that zoning, that part that says kennel, is that still in the zoning for that building?
A cat kenneling facility.
It will
yes.
only say cat kenneling facility. It won't say,
Correct.
because when I look up definitions for kennel, it's almost all of them have the word dog in them. And I'm a dog person, so I'm not opposed to that. However, at that location I am, and while I think I'm reasonable and you think you're reasonable, and we would say, yes, that dogs can't go there because there's not a lot of room in the back. Somebody down the road might say, well, it says kennel, and so we can let that. And so that's what I'm trying to avoid, because there are houses there and they were there, and I don't want to open the door to a problem down the road. I think that this use is pretty cool. My concern is opening it up for problems if she leaves and that word kennel is there. What does that do? Thank you.
Well, certainly if it was a broad definition in the permitted use as kennel, then as we define kennel, as the city defines kennel in the zoning ordinance, that would be accommodated. Again, from the perspective of the department, the ordinance, if adopted as recommended by the department, would limited to cat boarding facility only. And the department, from its perspective, if Ms. Budnick had come in and said she wanted to board dogs there, we would have recommended that she not proceed forward for the reasons that Mayor Garitano mentioned. Dogs typically have run spaces. Run spaces create noise, and we have consistent complaints from Pumpkingham Palace relative to the owners of property to the south of that Schnucks Center. And for the most part, we were promised that those issues relative to dogs barking would be managed because there'll always be an attendant or an employee out there with them. I can assure you, when we have the parade there, it's noisy, and it's primarily noisy because of the dogs barking. So the department doesn't want to create another situation like that. At that time, Schnucks had very few tenants, and we thought we might be able to make that work. Generally, it does, but every once in a while, we get a complaint. It's usually when the owners of the facility are not following the protocols that are in play.
I'm just now seeing that there's a pretty good size outdoor area behind that building. I'm talking about Puppingham.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, if they wanted to do something related to dogs, they'd have to do some parking lot reconstruction probably to add outdoor space, and then that would come before us and we could squash it. Mhm.
My apologies. I did not turn the microphone when I was speaking.
Mr. Chair, to your point, required parking for this facility is 29 spaces. They're providing 29 spaces, so they can't eliminate any parking spaces without creating another problem that would ultimately be addressed by the city.
Yeah.
Got to park what you're required, and they're right at it. So any reductions would not be authorized.
Mhm. Yeah. No, I'm a fan of this idea.
It's certainly different. Ms. Budnick mentioned that. It's something that she hears a lot from her clients. She does this elsewhere in the metropolitan area, not necessarily cat boarding. But again, she was very adamant that she thought this be very successful and would primarily serve Wildwood residents.
Mhm. Yeah, if most cats are like mine, they wouldn't tolerate being in the car for very long to go somewhere. Commissioner Humphrey?
Okay, so just to alleviate my worries, there is not any chance that if this lady closes her business and pulls out, that at any time in the future, that word kennel in the ordinance could be changed to dogs. And I do know, I'm very familiar with the building because I was a very good patron of Anna Maria's Ice
Marie's
Cream when
Ice
it was
Cream.
there. Yes. So I'm very aware of the building. I just need to make sure that there's no chance that at some point in the future, if this woman were to pull her business, that can become a kennel where somebody can finagle and say, well, we have a little bit of yard outside. I just need that assurance.
Well, from the perspective of the permitted uses, as it's worded, a cat boarding facility, and then the associated conditions that go along with the new permitted use, only cats can be there. Any change in that would ultimately lead to a new public hearing and then consideration by the commission and city council.
Commissioner Jackson?
I just was thinking, so no other animals but cats.
As
So if she wanted to half it with the canaries, the carnage would be. So they couldn't just put in canaries either. It's just cat only and there's no other animals. There you go. I think we're good. I couldn't resist. Sorry.
Lions and tigers.
I believe we still need a motion.
Actually, there is a motion on the floor, Mr. Chair.
There is, okay.
My apologies. I thought we had talked about that.
I didn't make any.
There's a motion in the first part, and now this one, I think we,
Apologies. We had talked about that. Someone had asked if we needed a motion before we had discussion.
I believe that previous question was regarding the Ashley Grove discussion, not the.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you. Apologies.
so I'll make the motion.
by Commissioner Jackson, second by Commissioner Clayton. Any further discussion?
That is a motion to approve as written.
Thank you. Call vote.
Commissioner Clayton,
Yes.
Commissioner Depler,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Rubis,
Yes.
Commissioner Boren,
Yes.
Commissioner Helfrey,
Yes.
Commissioner Cohn.
Yes, provided I can board my pet tiger there.
Thank you, Mr. Cohn. Chair Beatty,
Yes.
Councilmember Brost,
Can I throw my grandkids in there too? Yes.
thank you. Mayor Garitano,
Yes.
thank,
All right, motion carries. Thank you. Real quick on that, you had mentioned staffing. Will they have someone there 24 hours?
We do not intend to have staffing there 24 hours, but they do intend to have it for most of the day and part of the evening. Miss Budnick lives just about a quarter mile away.
Okay, so
she's in-
she could respond if
Yes.
anything happens.
Yep. And it's my understanding they use cameras and things like that now to
Yeah,
keep an eye on the facility while it may not be physically staffed.
mhm. Okay. All right, let's see here. Next on the agenda. Looks like we're almost at the end. A request for the work session, Mr. Vernich?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I apologize. I'm date challenged, so I put April 1st, April Fools. It's actually April 7th. So my apologies. As was mentioned during the public hearing on electronic message boards and other sign regulations of the city, the department would like to hold a work session for our next Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, which would be Monday, April 7th. The intent would be to give us approximately an hour to hear presentations from our expert, from the city attorney, and the research his firm has done relative to sign regulations of other municipalities in the general region. And then finally, some conversation with the Department of Farm relative to the other regulations that have been identified in the printer. April 7th, 2025, Monday, before our regular meeting. And the department would like to start around 5:15 if at all possible. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Vernich. Any discussion or motion? Commissioner Clayton? All right, motion by Commissioner Clayton. There, get a second? All right, second by Commissioner Helfrey. All right,
I'm seconding it because I think that this is, we need to have this. I just would like to let you know that I don't know if I'll be able to be here for it because of my other job. So I'll just have to let you know, but I'm seconding it so we can get it on the books.
Is there a better approach so we could have as many of the Planning and Zoning Commission members available?
Well, if I was organized, I would have brought my calendar because I still use a paper calendar. And so I would be able to tell you. So no, I don't have another answer for you. I apologize.
Sure.
Oh, you don't have everything?
No, I'm still in the old century. Do you have it in your phone? What is it? Do we have class that night? Oh, well. But yeah, that get you off the hook, you know. I still stand by my motion. We're good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess we can just do a voice vote on this. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, motion carries. So 5:15 on the 7th. All right, and with that, a motion to adjourn. Motion by Commissioner Helfrey, second by Commissioner Clayton. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?